and urgently relevant. Welcome back to the SBI Rangdarshini Hall at the Bhopal Literature Festival. Our session carries a deep meaning, and it's meant to provoke, challenge, and awaken conversation. Women are more than just baby vending machines. It asks us to confront uncomfortable truths about how women's bodies, choices, and identities have been viewed, judged, and limited not only by society but often by systems that are not meant to serve them. This section is not about rejecting motherhood, it's about reclaiming choice, dignity, agency, and voice. It's about listening to a woman as a complete, full human being, which they are, right? And to begin, I warmly invite to the stage our amazing speakers, Colonel Dr. Nikita Naredi, and with her, I would request Parul Sharma ma'am to please come on the stage. Can we welcome them with a huge round of applause? Colonel Dr. Nikita ma'am is an alumnus of Armed Forces Medical College, a distinction holder in both MBBS and MS, and a recipient of multiple national and military honors. She has received Chief of Army Staff Commendation Medal thrice for exemplary service. A pioneer in her field, she was a part of the team that conducted India's first ovarian cortex transplantation, a cancer survivor. And her research has been widely published in leading national and international journals. Beyond clinical excellence, she is recognized as a, amazing teacher, journal reviewer, invited faculty at major conferences, and committed to volunteer, who conducts medication sessions in old age homes, IVF centers, and even prisons. She is an inspiration for all of us. She is also the author of a powerful book, Am I Just a Vending Machine?, shortlisted for Best Non-Fiction Debut at PVLF Festival 2025. Her works are amazing. Can we welcome her with a huge round of applause? And guiding this conversation, we have the most amazing moderator, the sweetest person, Miss Parul Sharma ma'am, who is a corporate behavioral skills trainer, communication and executive presence coach who has worked with global organizations including EY and Deloitte. Before discovering her ikigai in training and facilitation, she spent years as a journalist with The Hindu and as an educator with Army schools experiences that deeply shaped her empathy and perspective. She is a familiar and trusted voice in literary and women-centric platforms. Parul ma'am has moderated sessions at the Abhivyakti Army Women's Lit Fest and has been a recurring anchor at our very own Bhopal Literature and Art Festival. So can we welcome her also? Yeah. And together, they are going to have an amazing, thought-provoking session. It's not just important for women, but it's important for each and every one of us, for the society as a whole. So now the stage is on to you, amazing powerhouse ladies. And thank you so much. Can we begin the session with a huge round of applause?
Thank you, Lisha. Such a warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Cha.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for being here in this session. This is sort of a homecoming for us, Colonel Nikita, because if I'm not mistaken, you began writing this book, Am I Just a Baby Vending Machine, when you were posted in Bhopal. Am I right?
Yes, Bhopal is definitely a homecoming for me, and I think I have a lot of fond memories about this place, both as a professional, as a person, and most importantly, the book took birth here only, at this very soil. So I owe a lot to this Bhopal.
And we are going to discuss this book today at Bhopal Literature and Art Festival, so truly a homecoming. This is a very powerful and sensitive topic, as Disha brought out and as we were discussing earlier in the day. And this sits at the intersection of medicine, memoir, it is a memoir, and also a social commentary on how we view women. And it's more than, you're an IVF specialist, of course, but it's more than about fertility treatment, right?
More than being a medicine book, it's about the social cause which is surrounding infertility and childlessness in our society.
True, and the societal expectations that women tend to carry, the emotional weight that we carry. And I want to begin by asking you about the title of the book. Am I Just a Baby Vending Machine? It's a very evocative title. What made you think of it?
Uh, as I already mentioned, and you've already given the introduction, I've been into the field of infertility for now almost 15 years. So initially, I was a gynecologist and then subspecialized into infertility. So I primarily look after women who have not been able to attain motherhood. So after a few years of my practice in infertility, I realized the status of the women in the society. And this status is not just restricted to a lower strata. I think it is seen all across, whether a woman is educated or not. And after a few years, something which struck is a woman just restricted to being a mother? So is her role only a mother? And I felt that a woman, apart from being a mother, she's also a nurturer. So I wanted to bring forth to the society that how a woman is treated by her husband, and as said, we might call it a husband or a partner, how treated by the family, the in-laws, sometimes her parents herself. And most importantly, the woman starts ostracizing herself also. She starts feeling that she's incomplete if she does not wear a badge of a mother. So there were many conversations which used to happen behind closed doors with the patient and myself. And I thought that the best way to bring forth these experiences and the emotions of a childless woman is to write a book. And that is how I started collecting those incidents. And my book is in the form of a conversation which has happened behind the closed doors of my clinic. And so I have asked this question to the society, that is a woman just a baby vending machine? That without that marriage, press button, and child is out. So I think this is one question we all need to ask, and a woman herself needs to ask, that is her role just restricted to being a mother?
I like this when you say that a woman needs to ask this herself, because apart from the cultural and the familial expectations, there are a lot of these internalized expectations that we have, and it affects our sense of self-worth, women's sense of self-worth. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, basically, we call it as a society, but I think it starts from the individual. So when a girl child is born, we start imbibing in her subtly or overtly, depending on the strata of the society or the education, that she has to study, she has to get married, she has to go to another house, and she has to start nurturing. So somewhere she starts getting this feeling as she grows up from adolescence to adulthood, that apart from all the ticks in the boxes, one very important tick is her role as a mother. She feels that motherhood is an important aspect of the life.
Motherhood completes you. That's what they've been telling us from the beginning.
Yeah, motherhood, that without a child, you're incomplete. You have to look after a child. You have to get married. So then it comes to the family, then it comes to the society, and then it comes to a culture of the whole nation. And it's not only restricted in our country or in our society. Although I'm a medico and probably my research primarily only pertains to medicine, but when I was writing this book, I wanted to study the socio-cultural status of the world. That is the time I realized that motherhood is one badge, a woman from every part of the country wants to wear. So that is how I think it starts from a woman, then it comes to the family, percolates to the society and the whole nation.
And it starts from the burden of the parenthood is on the woman all the time. It starts from the very question. When you get married, nobody's asking the man, when are you expanding the family? Also, I have this issue with saying that when are you starting a family, as if these two people are not a family. And then they say, they'll always ask the lady. When are you starting a family? They never ask the man. So the burden from the beginning is
on a woman.
It's bestowed on the women. True. And when they come to you for the treatment, what kind of strain have you observed between the relationship between a couple who's come to you for treatment? Between the partners who are going through this?
The intimacy which is there between two partners, I feel that we time it, or we want the result out there, that partnership. So when that partnership result is not out, I think the intimacy also starts dwindling. I would not say that it is there throughout, but yes, their intimacy and their camaraderie decreases. Because then, whether it is the physical act of being together or the psychological act is only focused towards having a child, towards having that family in inverted commas, which we have said. So, but yes, we do get couples where the husband or the partner is part of this whole journey. But most of the time, I've felt that then the spark or the warmth which was there, which is supposed to be, which is meant to be there between the husband and the wife, starts dwindling because the lady feels that I have failed in the most basic biological function which I am supposed to carry out.
So the relationship is under strain, which
This
is
is under strain.
sort of ironic because they're coming to you for something so personal and yet they're
Women have shared that the kind of love which was there probably 5 years back is there no more. Yes, there are some couples who maybe we are seeing, especially in the educated lot, yes, we see that the husband takes care and says that yes, we are part of the journey, even if it doesn't happen, it's okay. But because we belong to the armed forces fraternity, so we have a very myriad kind of crowd where we have men who are from all strata. We have soldiers who are probably from the middle socioeconomic status or the low socioeconomic status. So I think that is how they are also brought up. We do not penalize them, but that is how their bringing is. If the bringing up for a lady is like that she's supposed to have a child, similarly, the male is also always felt that usko परिवार आगे बढ़ाना है. They feel, very recently we had a session where we had all the men who were going through this treatment, both the couples, and the men were asked that, why did you marry? So out of 10 men, 8 of them replied कि हमें परिवार आगे बढ़ाना है. So that was disastrous. That they did not want to have a partner, and that is why they did not want to get married. They wanted to marry because they wanted to carry forth the family. So this is the bitter truth. Probably in our villages and towns, it might not be there in the cities, but yes, this is the truth which we need to know.
They say that it takes a village to raise a child. In your book, Dr. Nikita, you talk about how it takes a village to provide emotional and psychological safety to the couple, especially women who are going through the assisted reproductive technology. Can you talk a little about it, the support that the partner can give and the family can give to the lady who's, and it's a very painful procedure.
Yeah, the assisted reproductive technology is not just about a medical treatment. It's not just about pumping hormones or making eggs. It's a comprehensive treatment wherein we need a holistic approach, both medically and psychologically. So I feel that this treatment does not just require a medical treatment. So to give a holistic perspective, the emotional support from the partner, from the family, from the friends is very important. And I think it need not need to be urged every time that it's okay. It's okay is also a painful statement. The lady should just know that the partner is with me, my parents are with me, my in-laws are with me. And sometimes in subtle terms, we can just communicate that it's okay, need not be spelled out, but she should feel that it's okay. So I think that is the most important thing. And definitely, as I say, that the role of the partner is humongous because she feels every time that I have failed him. Because he stands in front of his parents, and we've had instances when women have been bashed up because they were not able to conceive. Because the husband is asked by the parents every day that the younger son has a child, but you don't have a child. So where, as we just saw in the previous session, that men are silent. He cannot cry. He does not share his emotions. So sometimes where he takes out his wrath is his partner. He bashes her up. And this is very, very common. So I feel that the Assisted Reproductive Technology Center of any city or town is a mirror of the society. If one goes and sees, not at the medical level, not at what the success rate, they say people proclaim 45%, 50%. I think that is not important. What is important is we need to see the social angle of this disease because it is not just a medical disease, it is a social angle which has a paramount importance for each one of us who form the society.
Colonel Nikita, you spoke about very intimate struggles between a couple who's going through ART. What are your lessons about hope, grief also, and resilience as well from the struggles that you have observed and have been sort of part of?
I feel that as a clinician, as a doctor, we are again, as I'll reiterate that our role is not just as a clinician. Our role is to be part of the journey of the couple. So we need to give them hope. And again, when they fail the cycle or the treatment is not successful, we need to make them understand. We need not impress upon them that yes, it was a failed cycle, but nevertheless, we need to give them that there is still a light at the end of the cave, at the end of the tunnel. That light might be in other forms. We need to communicate that just having a child does not complete you. There are other ways. You're complete even without a child. You have many attributes which you as a person has been ignoring or your partner has ignored. You might be a very good corporate leader. You might be a very good beautician. But women shelve all these attributes when they start this journey. And as far as resilience is concerned, I think women are very, very resilient. That is why God gifted them with a full set of X chromosomes. So we are not just endowed with one X, we are endowed with two X, which makes us much more stronger than individuals who have XY chromosomes.
And I want you to talk about some of these people. Of course, we will not name them, but you mentioned that there was a corporate leader and people at doing very well professionally, successful professionally, and yet they felt that they were being judged because they could not conceive biologically. Would you want to touch on that?
As I mentioned that in my book, I've written the book in the form of stories, conversations. So I've mentioned about this, what Parul ma'am is asking, that one lady, she was a corporate boss in her office, but she was not given any credence at home because she'd been married for 8 years and she was not able to conceive. So no matter how powerful she was, but when she came home, she felt that she was just a speck. Then there was another lady who was, she had come to us. She was a very acclaimed woman. At the same time, she was very fond of plants. I've written about that story, and she used to have a collection of bonsai in her house. She came to me after 3 months, and I found her very drained. And on asking, she said that I used to love my plants. I was very fond of my plants. Many times she used to get plants for our center to beautify it. But that day she said that I've left that house. I've given away all my bonsai and plants because I started getting jealous of my plants because my plants were blooming but I could not bloom. So I moved my home, and now I think my only focus and my only aim is to have a child. So that is how these are the small incidents which I have covered, and I've shared that women, no matter what they achieve, and it's a fact. I think if we take a poll right now also, we all have seen back home that motherhood is something which we all feel makes a woman complete.
There's a lot of emotional support from your side. You and your team has to give to the woman or the couple who have come to you for ART. How do you balance this? Do you have the time to manage your clinical expertise with providing the emotional support that they need?
I think this is one thing which is very, very important and that is very close to my heart. I feel treating a patient just by looking at his or her documents, writing injections, doing IVF, retrieving eggs and embryos is very, very easy, which after 5-6 years, all of us will take the skill or we become skilled enough. But the thing which connects us to patients and which will make us a better team is our emotional connect with the patient. The patient should feel that the team or primarily the doctor is part of their journey. And definitely it does percolate on us because this treatment has a lot of failures associated with it. But yes, emotional support makes a treatment complete. It makes more holistic. Counselors are there. All IVF centers or couples who are undergoing treatment, they do go for counseling. But I feel the connect which a clinician who's seeing a couple has with the patient is of most important rather than a third person. Yes, there are certain things which because of paucity of time, we are not able to go into a lot of nitty-gritties. That is the time we tell them to go for a psychological counselor. But yes, emotional support is of a lot of importance for a childless couple.
You spoke about the treatment failing as well. I want you to tell our audience what is the success rate of the fertility treatment? And when should, the related question, when should uh, one stop this and perhaps
The IVF success rate, if we go by textbooks and not by what the IVF centers claim, is definitely not beyond 45-50%. It might go to even 55%, but not beyond that. And if you go by standard textbooks, when we say success rate, it is not just pregnancy. When we say success rate, is the take-home baby rate. When a couple finally goes home with a baby, that is very less. It is just maybe 35-40%. Maybe 55% will conceive, but not all 55% will finally go with a baby. So the overall success rate of this assisted reproductive technology is just 35 to 40%. So that is another thing which we need to be very transparent with the couples who are undergoing treatment. So that is also one aspect which we need to be clear from the first day when we are embarking on treatment and not give them false hopes. We need to say that yes, this treatment is available, but we should not give lot of hopes that yes, 100% you'll go with a baby in the hand. And as far as the second question is concerned, I think maximum of 3 cycles. But yes, again, I would say that people don't give up. They go for 4 or 5 cycles. The women keep getting pumping injections in her body, and she doesn't want to give up. But we need to tell that there are another way of parenthood. Adoption is something which is not very acceptable in our country, but that also we need to tell to our couples that that is also a journey towards parenthood. The acceptance rate is very, very low, but sometimes after 4th or 5th cycle, when they finally give up and they feel that without a child, the family does not consider them complete, or the couple does not consider themselves complete, they go for adoption also. But yes, the number of cases which go for adoption is minuscule.
And what are your views on the egg freezing eggs? Is it, a lot of people seem to be thinking positively about it.
Egg freezing has come up in a big way. A lot of us are from the corporate background, and big companies like Google, Facebook, and Apple, they are sponsoring egg freezing for their lady employees. But I feel that it is a false sense of security which we are giving to the young girls and young women. I would not say that it is not okay, but if you go medically, egg freezing is also like IVF, which we need to understand. That if IVF is only 40-45% successful, the egg freezing will also have 40-45% success rate. So if a woman freezes her eggs at the age of 26 and she plans to get pregnant at 40 years when her ovaries will have no eggs, there is no sure shot that the eggs which are frozen will ultimately lead her to go with a baby. So egg freezing can be done. Again, there were medical reasons for egg freezing when egg freezing started off. It was primarily for young girls and women who have cancers and they have to go in for chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Now the indications, when we started off studying assisted reproduction 12 years back, so that time it was mainly for cancer treatment, and now this is called social egg freezing, wherein a woman wants to climb high on the corporate ladder. She doesn't want to become a mother because that is another angle. Here we are talking about poultry, that yes, she cannot become a mother because she is not able to do it biologically. But there are other women who think that they want to climb up the corporate ladder, reach to a position and then become a mother. So this is social egg freezing. Yes, it can be done, but one should not feel that yes, that guarantees 100% success rate.
And is there any way to know your reproductive health?
Yeah, there are a lot of blood tests which are available. One of them is, again speaking medically, it is called anti-Mullerian hormone, which tells us what is our egg bank. We all women are endowed with a fixed number of eggs they are maximum when we are in our mother's womb. It decreases when we are born. It decreases when we reach puberty, and it starts declining drastically after the age of 30 to 33 years. So that is the time nowadays girls and women are planning pregnancy. So we are racing against time. There is a biological clock which keeps ticking. So that is another aspect which we think it's food for thought for all of us.
And I want you to talk about that because Indra Nui, in one of her interviews, she talks about how for the women, the biological clock and the career clock seem to be ticking at the same time. You mentioned about the corporate ladder, climbing the corporate ladder. In any industry, when we feel we have arrived, we are 35 or around that time. So we are successful, yes, but the society and our bodies, more importantly, are telling us that
Need to
if
hurry
we,
up.
if we want to have a baby, then this is the time. And this is
Mismatch.
a mismatch and a constant struggle. How do you view that?
This is something I think very, very tricky, what to choose. Whether to listen to your calling that you want to climb high and attain that place where you have always been wanting to dream to.
And you've worked very hard for
And
it.
you've worked, you've studied, you've worked hard, you've achieved accolades. And the other place is you have that innate desire to become a mother too. So that's a very big struggle. I think again, not only a woman, the partner, the society, and the company, that they need to get a little moderate on the woman, because a woman thinks that once I become a mother, I will go on maternity leave, my boss will look down upon me, and by the time I come back, I would have lost the skills. Yeah, he would think that now she'll be more concerned with the baby. I think we can strike a balance. Strike a balance both with the support of the family, the partner, and most importantly, a work environment. We women always have to struggle to prove ourselves. This we have been doing right from the childhood. Because when we were kids, again, back 20 years back, when we were kids, so we wanted to show that yes, we are as good as our brothers. Even we are also capable of becoming doctors, we are also capable of becoming engineers. Similarly, when we get married and we go to the other family, there also we want to prove ourselves that yes, I can carry out both the chores of the house also, and I can be good at office also. So every time we have to prove ourselves. So I think this proving ourselves is causing the biggest problem, because we are always judged. So I think the judging part has to decrease. So that is when we can behave naturally, and we can carry out both our roles, both as a mother as well as a good employee.
Coming back to the book, doctors are considered close to gods. In your book, you talk about that one particular incident where you felt that you were fighting against God herself.
Yeah, all of us, especially in our country, we always take the doctors are given position next to God. But I think we are not gods. We cannot play gods, because He has decided something for us. And in this profession especially, I have realized that divinity has a big role. And when it comes to infertility, I feel that we are fighting a couple's destiny, a woman's destiny. I would just like to share, because Parul ma'am is asking about one particular incident. There was a couple, they were married for 8 years. She underwent 2 IVF cycles. The cycle did not work out. In the last third cycle, her cycle was successful. She was already 35 years. We were fighting with her body, her uterus. She had multiple fibroids. The surgery was done. And with the help of science and with the blessings of God, she conceived. She had a baby. And I generally don't do cesareans, because I look after last 2-3 years, because I've reached a position. So most of my colleagues, they do the cesareans. But that particular woman, she was high risk. We did a cesarean. She delivered a healthy male baby. And after 2 days, when she was absolutely fine, she was discharged. And on the 5th day, very early in the morning, I get a call from her husband that please rush to the hospital immediately. There was some urgency. So I immediately rushed in my night clothes to the hospital. And when I reached the hospital, I saw that the baby was blue in color. The baby was no more. So that is the time I started questioning myself and questioning God, that this couple was not meant to have a child. The baby had aspirated milk at night while feeding, and the baby choked and the baby died. So she had 2 failed cycles. The third cycle was successful. She delivered normally, but she lost the baby. So I think many people would not endorse it, and I, being from a scientific background, I would say that yes, we are fighting the destiny, we are fighting gods when we are saying that we are doing assisted reproduction. Probably that couple was not meant to have a baby. So that is the time we feel that are we really playing gods?
Is there a conversation that happens in your clinic with you and your team that you wished had happened more openly outside your clinic? Is there something that you discuss that you wish people understood better?
One thing is very important, is that I really wish that women were understood better. I really wish women were more stronger. I really wish they're taken care of. That is one thing I think that is lacking. We might say, we might be thumping our chest that we have reached the 21st century where women are at par with men. I don't mean that we are feminist. When we say feminist, as the previous session mentioned, it does not mean that women are superior. It only means that the two genders are equal. The two genders are equal whether it is socially, whether it is politically, or whether it is economically. And no matter how much we say we are fighting for gender equality, but we are very far from it. And we see it every day. Because even in terms when a child is born, we see that a male child is always preferred to a female child. Still now, when we do a delivery or we carry out a cesarean, the first question the lady asks is, ladka hua ki ladki? I'm waiting for that day when they will stop asking that what is the sex of the child. So that is one thing I really dream of, that I see a world where there is not a frown on the face of a woman or the family when a girl child is born.
I think adoption is another conversation that you wished happened more openly outside. You spoke about how it's not taken as positively as it should be. And that's another route to expanding your family, adoption.
Adoption, especially in certain parts of the country, they feel that the child should be from the same lineage, the same blood. So I think that is a very big obstruction or a roadblock in terms of adoption. Because many of the families, they have this, that they will not bestow the lineage or the heir or the property to the adopted child. I think that is one of the biggest barrier. So that again will happen when we have open conversations about it. We as educated people, when we start endorsing about this another journey towards parenthood, so adoption will also come in a big way. And in the IVF centers, we as clinicians, we should not only be money-minded about the number of cycles being carried out for the couple. This is the place where we can start. There is a child who's awaiting a family, and there's a family which is awaiting a child, and we need to marry both these places. A couple who doesn't have a child and a child who does not have a family. So I think we can marry them and bring together a more wholesome family and a child who is ignored and kept in the orphanage.
That's a very important message, Gagan Likita. What do you want the readers and the audience who haven't experienced infertility to understand?
The most important message is that a woman has an identity beyond her biological role. Whether voluntary childlessness or involuntary childlessness. When I say voluntary childlessness, I mean there are many girls and women who are going in for not having a kid. And then involuntary childlessness, when a woman wants to become a mother, we should respect a woman. A woman, whether she becomes a mother or not, she's still a woman. I think that is the most important message. And as we discussed earlier also, women who are planning not to have a child, they are again looked down upon. It is said that they are very selfish. They don't want to take on the responsibility. Because nowadays, I think rearing a child is a big responsibility for a couple. I think I don't endorse that, but again, it is very dichotomous. But I would say that if she really does not want to have a child, it's okay. We should respect her as much. I think that is the most important thing. And we should think a woman beyond her biological role. She's capable of many more things. That is an attribute which has been given to her naturally and physiologically, but that is not her only role.
And it should be a right? Because there's a famous dialogue in Friends, if you've seen it, no uterus, no opinion. So I think that should be the case, right? I mean, we get to decide.
Yeah, every person who has a vocal cord is not a singer.
Absolutely.
They cannot be a very good opera singer. Similarly, every woman who has a uterus need not be a mother.
Yes, and doesn't want to be, and as you rightly said, that should be respected and should not be questioned, and they should not be judged, definitely. I would like to open the house for any questions from our members of the audience, and we have 3 questions. We'll start with Neha, and then you, and then...
Am I audible?
Yes, Neha.
I wanted to share a personal experience. One of my friends went through the process, wasn't successful, but that took a toll on her mental health, and that inevitably influenced the relationship between the couple as well. But my question was, as you yourself said, the success rate is less. Now, what about the women who are not able to succeed in this? How should they deal mentally? Because I think with the hormones and all that, it anyways takes a toll on their mental and physical health.
So I think here, as I said, that we need, when we embark on this journey, that is a time we need to be very open and transparent with the lady. That yes, we are embarking on this journey. You have tried physiologically, it did not work out, and now we are trying in the assisted manner. This might also not be 100% successful. So you should be aware that yes, it will not be successful. And at the same time, the partner and the family should be there throughout the journey. At the same time, give her that moral support, even if not overtly, that yes, even if it's not successful, it's okay. Either they adopt a child, or she can finance her other attributes. She might be a good writer, she can pursue that. She need not be restricted. She should not cocoon herself in the room that yes, I failed naturally also, and now I have failed in an artificial manner also, so I'm a big failure. We should not give her a badge of a failure.
But sometimes I think what Neha is asking, and I also wanted to ask this, is sometimes we women tend to fuse our identity, our reproductive capacity, and the identity. So we want to become mothers, but we can't. And now because of ART also, it's failed. We're not able to. Then what do we do? How do we, is there any way to handle that mental?
So mental health is, it's not a one-time procedure. It has to be gradual. So when the acceptance is the key. Acceptance towards the natural inability to conceive, and acceptance that it might not happen artificially or in the assisted manner also. And still, I can still work and contribute. So they should be part of support groups. That is very important. They should be encouraged to contribute to the society, to the family, or they should be working. Especially women who are not working, who are only at home, they are the ones who feel most ostracized, both by the family as well as by themselves. Women go for suicidal attempts when they are not able to succeed, especially after ART, because we in the armed forces, we are giving the treatment absolutely free of cost to our couples, which is a very big boon for our armed forces personnel. But this treatment is very expensive. We've seen couples, they have sold their land, they've sold their jewelry, and even when the cycle is not successful, that is the time they feel very doomed. And the lady, especially in very, very northern part of the country, the families say that we have spent so much money on you. So, and still now you have not been able to bear a child for our family. So that is the time she's even in a worst of condition.
Women are vending machines is not just a statement, it's conditioning. So how do you sort of go around that conditioning, and how do you sort of convince the people that it's just not that women are just vending machines?
So we have to, this narrative or this thought process has to begin from our homes when we have girl child at home from the very beginning. We need not tell her from the very beginning that your role is only to get married and that you will be a mother. So that is one of your roles, which if you are convinced about it, 90% of women want to go in for motherhood, because that is physiologically, hormonally, and nature has only bestowed out this role on us. A man cannot become a mother. Only a woman can bear a child. So that is one attribute which a woman has. But we need not impress upon her from the very beginning that is the most important role. So that is the time, if she's not able to fulfill the role, that is the time when she asks, am I just a baby vending machine?
True, and all of us have a role to play. They come much later as an IVF specialist. I think all of us, parents and family members, to impress on this point.
Ma'am, first of all, I love the activism that you've showed by writing such a book, which makes for a very important conversation in the Indian subcontinent. As you rightly said, that alternative ways of parenthood are available, but they are looked down upon. They're not very easily accepted. I had a two-part question. In your experience of so many years and having gone through,
Can we please
Have-
reduce the volume of...
my
Just the
point is-
perfect backdrop.
I know, right? Shubham Karoti Kalyanam indeed. My question is, you must have seen some successful cases as well, because what we do is we share what is common and what is, what has become a pattern. I would like to hear about cases where women did not achieve motherhood and it was okay for them and it was okay for their families and they ended up living very beautiful, fulfilling lives. That is my first question. The second question that I have is something that you said when you were discussing how people choose not to be mothers and how you wouldn't endorse it. I just had a quick question. Why wouldn't you endorse it? Why wouldn't you make choice-based, child-free decisions a very common choice for people to make? That's it. But once again, applause for the initiative that you've taken by writing such a book.
Thank you so much, Ayushi. I'll answer the first question, which was primarily about success stories and failure stories. Yes, since the success is around 45 to 50%, so I get couples who have conceived sometimes in the first cycle and sometimes maybe in the third cycle. So we have those kind of couples, and it really is exhilarating for us, not only to me, because we work as a team. Everyone plays a role. It's not just the doctor, it's the I feel that even the person who cleans the IVF lab is also part of the success story, because till the time the IVF lab is not clean, we'll not be able to have a success. But as far as failure is concerned, failures we've had, and there in the lower strata, the acceptance is very poor. The failure really cows them down very badly. And we in the armed forces give 3 cycles absolutely free of cost for the couples. So we've known couples who have not fared in their cycles which we have offered them. They've even gone to spending money and gone for 4th and 5th cycles. So we have, I have groups of those kind of people also. But yes, there in the other failed cycles, there have been couples who have gone for adoption. Just 3 days back, I met a couple who was not successful when I was in Delhi in my last tenure 10 years back. And now she came with a picture of a child whom she had adopted, and that child was 13 years old. She showed me that I struggled, and you had told us from the very beginning that mine is a tricky case, but nevertheless, I wanted to give a full shot. She tried thrice, but then she closed her book and she went in for adoption. She had a beautiful 13-year-old daughter. So that was very, very heartening to us, that yes, she was my failure story, because we could not, mine means we as a team, both because of the biological reason, but she ultimately adopted. And there are couples who finally move on, and then they decide that yes, we've not been able to achieve that, so let's enjoy life. So we have those kind of couples also, that then they move on and they enjoy life. So that camaraderie is there in that couple from the very beginning. That doesn't develop suddenly after 3 failed cycles.
That's a very important point.
So that partnership is there from the very beginning, when the partner is with the wife from the very beginning. So even in her failure or success, we've had cases where she has succeeded on all the 3 cycles, but she is aborted. We've had cases where we have 7 or 8 abortions after IVF. But then after that, they closed the chapter and they decided that yes, we were not meant to. They accept their destiny and they move on and they have a very lovely life. And as far as the second one I say is, here again I personally have 2 answers or 2 roles. As a mother, because I'm myself a mother of a 21-year-old daughter, and I feel motherhood is something which is there in innate us, and all of us want to become a mother, not because the partner wants or the family wants. We also want to it. We want to share our love. Yes, without that, we can still nurture, but when I say I don't endorse it, that many times girls, they take rash decisions at the age of 27, 28, that yes, I don't want to become a mother. And then suddenly at 35, 36, they come running to the IVF centers. So I don't endorse that's when I meant. So if you have decided that yes, you don't want to have a kid, you should be very sure. So by 29, 30, one should take a decision in life that yes, you want to be child-free or you don't want to be a child.
But Colonel Nikita, that's a hard decision to take. There are people who leave their work, the jobs that they were doing, and start something completely different, in a different industry, become entrepreneur. So we can't really, at 27, 28, can't decide for the rest of our lives. So there is a possibility that someone might feel that, okay, at 28 I wasn't ready and maybe I didn't want to become a mother, but at 40 perhaps I want to. So how do
That time
we...
then we are struggling with the biological and the physiological process, because that time we are not as rich. Our bank balance has gone down. So that time it might cow us down that yes, I took a decision at 40 years. Now it's very difficult for me. Then I have to go for egg donation and other modalities, which are
So
also
bank
very-
balance, you mean
the egg reserve.
egg reserve. So that has gone down. So that's
That
how we...
goes drastically down after 37. And there are increased chances of chromosomal anomaly in the babies. So at 40, you want to have a baby who will be healthy, not a baby who has Down syndrome or has some chromosomal anomaly. Or you at the age of 40, when we become pregnant, then we have very high chances of having increased blood pressure, diabetes, because physiologically the God or nature has made a pregnancy to happen between 25 to 35. And maybe as we discussed, women used to get pregnant even at the age of 18. And by 25, they would have 5 or 6 kids. So that is how the nature has made. So at 40, the pregnancy is very difficult. So it's a tumultuous pregnancy. So it is tumultuous both for herself, for the baby, and for the whole family.
Yes.
Good evening, I'm Tarika, and my question is about how men and women who choose to be child-free are perceived. So, just sharing a recent, how I kind of saw it, is Akshay Khanna, this actor. He became very popular recently because of a certain movie, okay? And then his old interview was dug out, wherein he's talking about, I don't want to take the kind of responsibility of marriage and having child, and I'm very happy about it. Perfectly fine. And most people are very, positive towards that.
Appreciative, very appreciative of
appreciating that he's very clear about life, and he's not, stepping into it due to societal pressure. So it's good he has made up his mind. Now, I'm talking about a celeb because everybody seems to have an opinion on celebs. So since you come from the armed forces background, which we know, that certain kind of machismo and everything is there. So have you had experiences, conversations, or your own opinion about, have you experienced how if there's a man who wants to go child-free, is he perceived somewhat differently by the society?
As far as, I think we again have a bias. So when men decide to be child-free, I think they're not as much looked down upon as compared to if a woman is. So I think there is a thought process difference. We have come across couples. So males generally don't come individually that yes, they don't want to have a child. When they come as a couple, or they come for counseling that yes, we don't want to have a child. So when we being a gynecologist, we've come across young ladies who are going for treatment. Then we tell them that this might be the consequence. You might not become a mother, or it will be difficult. So that time she's very open about it that for me fertility is not important. For me becoming mother is not important. So we just tell them. So as far as men are concerned, I think we've not had open conversations because they don't come to us directly, because people come to us when they have an issue. So so I would not be the correct person to tell about the male perspective.
And I think there was one more question. We'll come to you. There was, you wanted to ask something? Sure, please.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Zehra Gohar, and my question is that you said that when a woman is not able to become a mother, so she is depressed and she is not mentally stable. So many, I, I think that many women suffer from that, and what can be the consequences of this?
So when you talk about mental health, so mental health is a very important aspect. So when a woman goes through depression, or then she withdraws herself from the family. We have women who don't want to attend any social gatherings. She feels that every time I'll go for a social gathering, I'll be asked the same question, that when are you coming with good news? We have aunts and mausis who will keep asking, ki, "Khush
The
khabri kab
neighbors.
doge?" The neighbors. कि खुशखबरी कब दोगे. So this is the only question she's always asked. So this does have a depressing, because then she starts perceiving herself as failure. So her overall self-confidence goes down. So when we see women who are not able to conceive, and we see these women and vis-a-vis a woman who has a child, there's a lot of difference in their confidence, in their mental health. So this is the difference. And this percolates down because it increases. They might have to go for psychiatric consultation. Some women are also on anti-anxiety medications. So it all depends on our coping mechanism and how much we are supported by the partner and the family.
We spoke about, the coming back to the title. It also reminds me of several times that when they ask the women, when the couple is still planning a baby or not planning, after a couple of years of marriage, they will suggest the lady to go for the fertility treatment. कि इनका checkup करा लेते हैं. They never think of the man that he could also be responsible for it, and they are responsible in a lot of cases. But that is, it's almost always assumed that the woman needs.
This is the cause of the infertility. So the male infertility acceptance is again very poor, both in the society and the male himself. So now, nowadays, with the increased awareness about infertility and IVF, now males are aware. So that we also have seen a change in this last 10 years, that the acceptance and the awareness, which was not there 10 years, now it is there. But yes, to accept that, yes, I am the cause of the childlessness, this is very poor, or they don't want to exude that yes, I am the cause. So they would always keep asking, are you sure about the result? So they will keep getting tests done one again after again, that yes, finally to get endorsed that yes, they are the cause of infertility or the childlessness in the family.
And there was one question that you wanted to ask. Can we give her the mic, please?
Good evening, ma'am. Does being not a mother have a major setback on women's work? We talk a lot about womanhood, which is incomplete without a mother.
See, again, we have two aspects. If you're talking about the psychological aspect, there is a decrease in her confidence and her mental health. Maybe she might come out of it. But if you are asking about the biological or asking about the scientific ill health, per se, it is not until unless she has gone multiple treatments, because sometimes because of treatment there can be increase in weight, she would have taken multiple hormones, but as a whole she did not. But yes, there are certain diseases which we say, it's not that all women who are not able to conceive, they will have cancer, but there are certain cancers which, when we tell the risk factors, a woman who is conceived or has had a pregnancy, they are protective against certain cancers, primarily like breast cancer, ovarian cancer. So these pregnancies are protective against these cancers. So when we talk about when a woman at the age of 55 years comes to us and we diagnose her as a ovarian cancer, so if she has never had a child, so we see that yes, this particular risk factor is present.
And this is scientifically
This
proven?
is scientifically proven, because the hormones which are present for 9 months are protective against certain cancers, which is not there. So she's exposed to that cancer for 9 months more than vis-a-vis a woman who is not pregnant.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I think we have another gentleman who wanted to ask a question. Finally, a man.
Thank you, ma'am, for this very good and important session. My name is Kamal Singh. I have a clinical question. May I ask you, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Yes. Today we see that problem of PCOD is common in girls and women. My question is, during this condition, can women conceive the pregnancy having PCOD?
PCOD is one of the very important causes of infertility. Because of PCOD, the menstrual cycle is hampered. So it will not interest everyone. If you're asking a scientific question, that yes, PCOD is one of the very important risk factors, because ovulation does not happen, eggs don't form. So yes, a woman who has PCOS has increased chances of infertility. So we tell the woman to lose weight, and we give them medicines to regularize her menstrual cycle. So PCOD is one of the, when we see ovary as a cause, so PCOD is the important cause of infertility or childlessness.
Can PCOD be treated in allopathy?
we are treating by allopathy only. So PCOD is a disease which is there with a girl from womb to tomb. So there are risk factors which happen even when she's in her mother's womb, hereditary factors, certain nowadays genetic factors has also come up. But there is nothing called you can cure PCOD. PCOD cannot be cured.
So we reduce
We
the
can
impact
reduce
of
hormones. So, so then as she advances in age, because of PCOD, other problems will happen, primarily like metabolic syndrome. Women will have diabetes, blood pressure. So PCOD cannot be controlled, but cannot be cured. It can be controlled.
Control through exercise and
Exercise, diet, lifestyle
balancing
measures,
hormones.
lifestyle measures, yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guests. I feel really fortunate as a man that I could attend this session. And I wish every man in India could have heard you today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Even I wish that this book and this talk is more for men than women.
Definitely.
We're also having a translation very soon. And maybe it'll come to BLF the next year.
Yes, I will come with the Hindi thing. It's already translated in the process of publication. I think my husband, who is part of my journey, and probably he has supported me the maximum. So he wants to give I owe my journey to him. So he's there.
We need more men as allies.
This conversation had taught me and all the men here today how to support women irrespective of whether they choose to be a mother or not. Colonel Nikita, you've held a mirror to the society and the reflection wasn't easy to look at. Hearing that 10 out of 8 men marry just to extend lineage, or the heartbreak of a jealous woman from her own bonsai plants that they could create life, that hit hard. We learned today that IVF is a battle and not a magic wand, and that the pressure on women to choose between a hard-earned career and a biological clock is immensely unfair. But the takeaway is absolute. A woman is complete, with or without a child. Her identity is her own, not defined by her ability to reproduce or pass on property. As men, we need to do better at understanding that value. Thank you, Colonel Naredi, for speaking the truth, and a special shout out to Ms. Parul Sharma ma'am. We know her as the phenomenal voice of the Antarang stage, but today she steered this conversation with absolute grace and absolute masterclass. A huge round of applause for this wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much, Tanmay, and thank you everyone for participating, for coming here and attending this session and participating so enthusiastically.
To honor these incredible voices, I invite Niharika Singh ji, a member of the Society for Culture and Environment, to present the festival memento. This is the BLF 2026 memento created by Padma Shri Durga Bai. It depicts Little Gorlaya, a story where love transforms a tiny bird into a maiden, reminding us that the family and joy come in many forms. Thank you so much, Nikita ma'am, Parul ma'am, and a wonderful audience for attending such a vital conversation. This marks the closure of day 2 of here at SBI Rangdarshini Hall. The audience, you can now attend the cultural sessions. There are 2 cultural sessions from 7:15 p.m., 1 love letters drama,